people seem interested in how I'm using Claude Chat to create SOPs to build more complicated apps that have multiple steps. Sometimes Cursor Composer can actually just run amok a little bit and creates things that it shouldn't do, changes things that were there before, and just doesn't always quite understand the full context. And by breaking it down into SOPs, you can build more complicated things and it doesn't make as much of a mess as it can do sometimes. So in this example, I'm going to create a very simple LMS. So I've got a default boilerplate app here with user authentication already set up, and I want to sort of replicate this LMS that I've got on practicalprogrammatic.com, which is my programmatic SEO course. This is all built by hand. It's not in Laravel, and I've wanted to move it over, but it's just painful to think about doing because it was hard to build this. So you've got these courses. These are all the courses. Each course has a number of lessons you can click into. It tells you how many you've completed. We've got marked as complete, the date when it was marked as complete. And if you go into a specific lesson, you can, if we unmark it, then you can mark it as complete and it will log all of this for you. So this is the kind of thing that I want to rebuild in Laravel. And to do it, we're going to use an SOP. So I've got this AI folder here, AI/SOP, where I'm going to store these. The log folder I might talk about, but I haven't really got around to using that just yet. The idea was to try and log progress as I'm building these apps, but I actually think I can do it in the SOP, which I'll show you in a sec as well. So I'm going to go Command-Shift-I. I'm going to mention that SOP folder along with the code base, and then I'm going to basically explain the app that I'm looking to build. And I'm probably going to use voice just because it'll be a bit easier. I have a default boilerplate Laravel app set up along with user authentication already done. What I want to do is create a very simple LMS, learning management system, where I can create courses, and each course can have a series of lessons. These lessons can be marked as complete. We can track which user marked them as complete and when, and basically to track the progress of the user through the course. I'd also like some sort of seeder to create fake courses and lessons so that we can test this app out. To start with, please create an overview SOP file in the SOP folder, name it overview.md, and break down all of the steps that we need to create the bare bones minimum version of this product. Make sure to mark the user authentication and Laravel stuff as being checked. So we need to use markdown checkboxes, and that one should be checked by default. We don't need to talk about deployment or testing things at this point. I just want the very basic steps to get a working version of the app. Okay, so that's going to transcribe what I've said and then put that in there. I've mentioned those. I'll send that. So it should create an overview MD file inside here, which we can then review. Okay, so what do we got? Okay, so I really like doing this, having this first step here marked as checked, because actually the idea was that I would use this log folder to track what the progress is, but I could just get Cursor to mark these items as they're being done. Okay, but so now what I want to do is create an SOP for sort of these two steps. They kind of go hand in hand, the migrations and the models. I'm going to accept that. One of the things that I don't like about Cursor when I'm using it with Laravel is that these database migration files are all date-based, and Cursor doesn't know the current date. So either it just makes these all X's, or it just picks the date that it has, April or May or whatever, just some random date. But these need to run in the right order. I really wish Cursor would just pass the current time and date with every request. It would make my life a lot easier that if it just knew like the current time and date always. That would be a really great feature for me. But for now, I've been using this API, which just has all the information. So I grab the API URL I come into cursor and then I add it in here like a link. But I'm not going to do that for now because we don't need to. What I want to do is mention this overview MD file and then say, please review this overview.md file and create setup.md, which will break down all of the steps that we need to complete 1 and 2 of the overview, which is database setup and model creation. Don't include code examples, just include the commands and the step-by-step process that we need to go through to set all of that up. So now we just go through the overview basically and create different SOP files for each part of it. Okay, sometimes it messes up and does all this kind of stuff here, where it doesn't actually put the code in properly. So it just breaks out of the markdown. So sometimes you might have to prompt it again. Please don't include any code examples. Just give me a bullet point checklist of all the steps we need to take to set up the database and the models. For some reason, putting this into the, yes, but make sure you add it to setup.md. Thank you. So the idea is that you break down all these tasks within the overview into individual SOPs that can then be processed, and it works really well. Obviously, for some reason, the code doesn't always get added to the markdown. Sometimes it does. This example, it messed up a little bit, and I had to course correct it. But now we've got this setup MD, which is a full breakdown of what we need to do. So now we can go at setup, mention the SOP. Please use this SOP, work through the steps one by one to create all the migrations and all of the models with the relationships that we need. Okay. Oh, no, let me cancel that because it's going to create migrations. So now I actually do need this URL. So I'm going to mention again at setup.md, I'm going to mention this link. And then rather than like talk to it again, I'm just going to do that. Make sure you use the current time and date in the migration file name so that they run in the correct order. Thanks. Okay, now we'll set it off. So it's going to read that, know the date. So now it's creating all these migration files with the proper time and date in the right order. Perfect. This is decent. So now you can see how you can create these things in a much more controlled manner. It's got all of these different things. So we accept all, we go down here, open a new tab. What did it? I think it just needs me to migrate it, doesn't it? Artisan migrate. And now it's created all of those for us. Then let's just say, can you please update setup.md and overview.md and check the items that have now been completed? And then we'll just do overview.md at setup.md and see if it does it. I've not actually tried this yet, so we'll see. Hopefully it can mark them as completed inside the overviews. That would be sick if I could just track it like this. And I don't use the word sick very often. My kids would be absolutely outraged if they heard me say that. But yeah, it's done it. Look, so now we've got these checkboxes. So it's done the steps and we can track the progress of it. Notice again, like it hasn't checked run migrations again if changes were made because we don't need to do that. Or we could also now go back and test it. Now we could go back into overview and look at this backend management bit. I'm not going to cover it all in this video, but you could see now how I could say something like overview.md. Okay, please now create backend.md, which is a new SOP that breaks down all of the steps that we need to do item 3 on the overview, which is the backend management to create the controllers, the listing pages, and the forms that we need. Make sure that these are also specified to be Livewire components as well. Okay, so now we can see how you can easily scaffold out these SOPs. You've got them back to reference to, you can track your progress. It's actually just a fantastic way of building with Cursor that's a little bit less. It's not as sexy as one click. I built this feature in one click, 30 seconds. But actually when you're building big apps and there's a lot of relations and connections, I think this is a fantastic way to do it. And now you see, now that it's got some of the context of these previous files that we've done, it knows how to build the next one. So every time you do an SOP, it actually gets better. I mean, this is a pretty detailed SOP right here with all the information that you need to set all of this up, Livewire components and things. So this is fantastic. I could actually build this out in probably an hour, a couple of hours, whereas if I had just tried to muddle through it myself, it might have taken a lot longer, a lot more fighting with Cursor to get it to do what I want. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. If you've got a different workflow that works really well, let me know, because I'm always trying to improve how quickly I can build stuff. Yeah, cheers.